So I understand that Canadian whiskey is being more greatly appreciated abroad and locally. So tell us a little bit about what's been happening with Canadian whiskey.
Well, it's really quite a phenomenon. The last 5 or 6 years, Heather, people are really starting to appreciate Canadian whiskey. The high-end stuff, the connoisseurs are starting to enjoy it. Whiskey enthusiasts are lining up for it at the whiskey shows. I was in Louisville, and Jimmy Russell, famous Jimmy Russell, came over to my table so he could taste Canadian Club 100% rye. 5% increase in sales of Canadian whiskey last year across the board. That's a lot of whiskey when you're thinking about a multi-billion-dollar industry.
Yes, that's fantastic. And so I understand we have a growing craft industry here in BC. So what's been happening in BC?
BC is has become the hotbed of microdistilling in Canada. Now, BC is still a little bit behind some of the other provinces because they've started so recently, so they don't have a lot of whiskey on the market yet. However, I've tasted some great works in progress. Believe me, British Columbia is going to be making a name for itself in whiskey in the not too distant future.
So tell us a little bit about what's been going on here on the island, Shelter Point from Campbell River.
Well, I'm really excited about Shelter Point. First of all, this is really good whiskey to start with, okay? But this whiskey, Patrick Evans is a farmer up there. He has a great big farm, grows his own barley, does everything up there. And James Marinus is the distiller. And they started distilling quite some time ago in typical Scottish style pot stills. They had Mike Nicholson from the famous Scottish distiller come in and set everything up. And they're allowing them to mature as long as they need to in good quality casks. It's quite similar to a lot of Scotch whiskies. It's really
So tell us a bit about it.
well, you can smell the malt in there right off, and it's sweet. There's some grassiness there as well that, it's like dried hay. Not everybody gets that coconut flavor on the top, but I really can know some coconut in there. So it's really already got quite a bit of complexity and a number of different kinds of flavors in there, while maintaining a very good balance among the flavors. So there are no sore thumbs sticking out. It's really quite a nicely made, well-made whiskey, and it tastes really good. I think these guys have a great future.
Gary, it's great you could bring in your brand new whiskey and show us what you're working on at the distillery. So let's have a wee dram and find out a little bit more about it.
Absolutely, I'm really excited to be here and to showcase off our first offering, and we hope that snowball keeps going for the future.
So as the brewmaster, what's it been like to go from making beer to making whiskey?
It's not as hard as you think, but you have to hire a skilled distiller. And with our brewery, we have the necessary equipment to produce a wash, which is very similar to beer, just without hops. And the process is the same all the way through fermentation. The divergent point is where beer goes off and with the hops goes off and matures for about another month before it's packaged or kegged. Whiskey, once the alcohol is all in that wash, alcohol can be removed by distillation, and the maturation comes in barrels later on for a whiskey product. Now, this is a 3-year offering, and it's not our intention to sell 3-year-old whiskeys, but we do everything on sensory evaluation, so we have a limited release.
So tell us a bit about what you were trying to achieve with this whiskey.
It is a single malt. All the raw materials come from the Prairie region in Canada here, and we use ex-bourbon barrels, and specifically with these ones, we'll give you caramel and vanilla notes from the inside of the barrel because the barrel is charred. And from the malt, you'll get notes of honey and a little bit of heather I get in this too. And so it's a very straightforward single malt and very delicate and balanced and a little warm because it's a young brash whiskey still. And then as the whiskey ages for longer years in the barrel, it'll pick up more color and it'll get more of the barrel notes and become a little more woody.
Definitely has some sweetness to it, lots of vanilla, and it's very nice. So the Hotel Grand Pacific has a very strong commitment to having local product, Canadian product. So tell us why you feel it's so important to have those things in your bar.
Victoria locals pride themselves on using and supporting local products and establishments and services, whether it's our tourists coming from outside of Victoria and BC, Alberta, Washington, across the US. they want to try and use our local product, and so being able to showcase not only some of our local wines and breweries, but now some of our great local distilleries that are coming up is great.
We've discovered there is lots of great BC product out there to be tried, so the next time you're out and about, think Canada first. I'm Heather Leary, community producer, Shaw TV. Cheers.
I'm here in Colwood today to speak with artist Brandi Satterly and learn about the People of Canada portrait project that she's been working on. Many people, when they think of Canada, think of the illustrious beaver, and others, tasty maple syrup. Let's see what Brandi thinks.
The 2010 Olympics in Vancouver was really kind of a starting point for me with Canadiana. Up to that point, I painted landscapes and all kinds of things, but that moment really struck me. I went over to Vancouver, and you see all the stereotypical images of Canada. They had igloos and polar bears and mounties and all of that stuff. And I thought to myself, is that really who we are? Are we still these stereotypes? But I also love all those stereotypical things about Canada. So I started painting hockey masks and hockey-themed pieces based on that experience. Over the years, I found that I wanted to connect with that deeper meaning of Canada. So I got out and traveled across the country and met artists all over Canada. So the experience has gone from something very stereotypical based to something more realistic and moments that I've shared with people. I think the most important piece that I've painted in the last 10 years is probably a hockey mask on the Canadian flag. It kind of started this whole snowballing of this Canadian theme. The project that I'm working on right now is called the People of Canada Portrait Project. It's a collaborative project between Canadians and myself. I had this idea to recreate this Grant Wood painting called American Gothic. And I wanted to do a Canadian version of it. So I phoned up my friend and I said, take a picture of yourself and your husband in the field out in Manitoba and send it to me. I have this idea. It went from there. I like the whole message of being an independent artist and feeling free. And even though they're in front of a houseboat that says house for sale, the title of the painting is not for sale. So essentially, they're not for sale. Their minds are not for sale. They're free to live life the way they want to live it. So, and to me, that really speaks of Canada, that freedom that we have to do whatever we want in life. So Canadians send in a photo of themselves and perhaps a loved one or someone who's inspired them in life. And then what I do is I take that photo and I create a portrait based on an interview I do with them. I haven't had very many photos from Aboriginal Canadians, and I would really love to receive some from a diverse group of people in Canada. I'm also looking for photos that come from special moments, maybe significant times in life, turning points in life, you doing things that inspire you. So ideally, it's two people in the photo, and it's the relationship between the two people that's important to me. In this case, the photo was so spectacular and so inspiring that I kept the photo as is. What I did was I added little elements that were inspired by the interview I did with the two kids, which is really cool. The baby blanket, the soccer ball, the Lego pirate were all elements of things that the kids talked about in their interview. What I learned in traveling across Canada, meeting people, the stereotypes do exist for a reason, because they are very true in many parts of the country. There are polar bears, there are moose, there are horns and skulls on people's sheds. My exploration of Canada was a way for me to connect to those stories that have always been told about Canada. And I think that Vancouver Island has its own biosphere here. Like it's its own little entity, and it's so separate from the rest of Canada. It's very unique. And so what I learned is that, you know, all of those things do exist and all of those stories are true, but we're just a little bit disconnected here, and it was a really interesting experience to leave here and then come back with that information.
There's a wonderful article written by Brandi Satterly in Our Canada, Our Country. What does your Canada and your country mean to you? For Community Producers, I'm Kathleen Burton.
Did you know that Sir John A. MacDonald, Canada's first Prime Minister in 1867, also became the Member of Parliament for Victoria in 1878? And just to remind us of that special event, his statue stands here outside the Pandora Avenue entrance of City Hall. MacDonald was the Member of Parliament for Kingston, Ontario for a number of years. But his government was defeated in 1873, and the Liberal Prime Minister Alexander Mackenzie took over. British Columbia had not been part of Canada in 1867, but we joined in 1871, specifically because MacDonald's government promised to build us the Canadian Pacific Railway, to join the East with the West. But in 1878, it was quite clear that railway was not being built. Mackenzie's government didn't want anything to do with it. The legislature of British Columbia voted overwhelmingly to secede from Canada if the terms were not met. Well, that very year, another election, and the Conservatives were returned to power. And MacDonald lost his own seat in Kingston. Strange things in those days. The elections took place at different times, and so somebody stepped down in Victoria. MacDonald took over the seat and was elected here along with Amor de Cosmos. It was a two-member seat at the time. He served as our Member of Parliament from 1878 until 1882, when another election brought his party back to power, but this time the people of Kingston decided that he could be their Member of Parliament again. He never came to Victoria during his term as Prime Minister when he was our Member of Parliament. He came back in 1886, though, to drive the last spike of the ENN Railway. It was a small token of appreciation. By this man, we saved his political skin in 1878, and he paid us back in a small way by arranging to have the ENN Railway built. If you'd like to find out more about this and many other stories of Victoria history, join me and my other guides on a tour. Check us out at www.discoverthepast.com.
2017 Shawnigan Lake Show and Shine is so excited this year to be involved with the Canadian Women's Ride Day. In collaboration, we've created this Rally in the Valley, just an absolutely monstrous event, all going to an absolutely fantastic charity. We're going to have cars showing up on July 23rd, starting at 10 and going to 3. We're going to have lots of cars, lots of trucks, full open class. There's not going to be any restrictions to vehicles or motorcycles. So we hope everybody can come out and enjoy this awesome event for an incredible charity.
We're here celebrating our 5th anniversary of Canadian Women's Ride Day in the beautiful Cowichan Valley. We, along with our co-sponsors, 100.3 The Q and Country Grocers, would like to invite the whole motorcycle community, male and female, to join us on our 2-day event this year. What's new this year? We're joining forces with Shawnigan Lake Show and Shine. We are going to have a beer gardens, a barbecue, bike games, and to finish up our Saturday night, we're having barn dance with the band Curl. We're also making available camping, so you can enjoy all of our events over 2 days.
Cowichan Valley at the beautiful Cowichan Exhibition Grounds, July 22nd, 23rd. We have Canadian Women's Ride Day Rally in the Valley in conjunction and collaboration with the Shawnigan Show and Shine. It's a barbecue, it's live music, it's activities, biker games. We're raising money for the Cowichan Women Against Violence. Hope to see you guys all there. Thank you.
you know that one of Canada's original Fathers of Confederation from 1867 lies buried here in Ross Bay Cemetery? This is his grave. His name is John Hamilton Gray. He's the only original Father of Confederation buried west of Ontario. He was born in Bermuda in 1812, of United Empire Loyalist stock, but he was educated in Halifax, studied law, and became a lawyer in St. John, New Brunswick, and then became involved in politics, and eventually became the Premier of colonial New Brunswick in the 1860s. He was very much in favor of New Brunswick and the other maritime provinces joining together with what are now Ontario and Quebec, and attended the conferences in 1864 that led to the formation of Canada. By a strange coincidence, there was another man by the name of John Hamilton Gray who was also involved in this from Prince Edward Island. And there's a wonderful statue now in Charlottetown that shows the two men at the Charlottetown Conference of 1864. Confederation in 1867, July the 1st is when Canada first came together. Gray was elected to the first Parliament of Canada in 1867, but in 1872 he did not run again. We had become part of Canada in 1871, and Sir John A. MacDonald appointed Gray to the Supreme Court bench in British Columbia, and so he moved here and spent the rest of his days in Victoria, presiding over the Supreme Court in the old bird cages until the new one was built in 1889. That's the building until recently used as the Maritime Museum in Bastion Square. Unfortunately, Gray lived only for a few more months, and he died in 1889 and was buried here in what is really a fairly plain grave at Ross Bay Cemetery, surrounded by some of those that he knew: Sir Matthew Bailey Begbie, Sir Henry Creese, not too far away, other justices of the Supreme Court at the time. The Historic Sites and Monuments Board of Canada has placed a very attractive small plaque here to tell us who he was and why he's such an important person in Canadian history. If you'd like to find out more about this and many other stories of Victoria history, join me and my other guides on a tour. Check us out at www.discoverthepast.com.
It's the Story Boots School, and it's a collaboration between Manitoba Mucklucks and the Treadwright Foundation. And it's a six-week program that teaches students how to make moccasins or mucklucks, as well as beading.
That transmission of knowledge didn't happen in a lot of families for multiple reasons, whether it's, residential school or a 60s scoop or just people didn't learn it. And so they're getting a chance now to learn that. And often I've seen in a lot of these schools, it's like a missing piece kind of slides into place. Like, I know now how to make moccasins. Like, it's something my ancestors did. It's that connection to the past, and it grounds you.
And instructions for making a variety of styles. So mucklucks were originally made to keep people's feet warm and cozy in the cold weather, and they're lined with fur and often are beaded, and so they're also like works of art.
Our mission it's multi-layered. Like, the first step is we want to make sure that the art of moccasin and muckluck making is preserved, if not expanded, and made the same way as it is today 500 years from now.
We are going to be learning how to make the pattern by measuring the feet, and then from there cutting out the pattern in the hides, as well as doing beading and then assembling the moccasins.
Moccasins play a very symbolic role in a lot of Indigenous cultures. Like, for instance, when babies are born, you often give them a pair of moccasins. When couples get married, you give them matching moccasins. When someone goes off to school or does something, the military, or does something big, you usually send them with a pair of new moccasins. And also when people pass on to the world, or they are buried with new moccasins, because it's a journey to the next life. So it plays a big role in who we are as a people as well. So being able to make them is really, really important.
I'm the St. Jonathan instructor here at the school, and I wanted to take the course here because I like to learn different things so that I can teach my students how to hand it down.
I've been wanting to learn to make moccasins for a long time because my older sisters learned up island, and I got kind of jealous. I want to learn too.
I like to do it on a regular basis because it seems interesting.
I definitely think that it builds strength and community and confidence. And I know that when I'm working on moccasins that I can be having a really terrible day and be feeling really down, but even just the smell of the leather, and as soon as I start working, it's just like this healing feeling comes over my entire body, and I do like to intentionally put love into every pair that I make, and while I'm working on it, that I'm always breathing love, thinking love, and positive energy, because I think that's an important part of making them too, because we're wearing them on our feet. They're carrying us through our day.
To see the young people coming and wanting to learn, like taking the time and saying, I want to learn, I want to sit down and learn how to do this, it makes me have so much hope and have so much excitement for the future, because there's this young generation who is, I think, the turning stone in our country, is this new generation of young people that are full of pride, and that pride and pride in who they are is something that their parents worked really hard to instill in them. So we're seeing the fruits of our labor in these schools and seeing these young people learn, and they'll have that knowledge forever. And the only thing I tell them when they're in this class is you got to teach one person a year, and you have to make one pair a year so you don't lose the skill set, right? I always tell people when you give a pair of moccasins or mucklucks, slip a little piece of paper in when you give them to them. It's not just a slipper for you to wear around the house, but I'm giving this to you because I respect how you walk on this earth. You're an inspiration to me. I want you to keep going. I want you to keep positive. And when you put on a pair of moccasins someone gave you, you go, this person gave me good medicine. And sometimes it's all you need in the day to keep going.
Victoria Chinatown is the home base for thousands of Chinese, and it is the cultural symbol for them. One of the most important things for Chinese culture is comfort food. As you may know that this Chinatown is the oldest Chinatown over Canada. It had its beginnings in the mid-19th century. Every time when I come here, the first thing coming out from my mind is about food. And this is my comfort food.
We mainly sell roast pork, barbecue duck, and chicken.
I have a barbecue chicken, I believe, and a little bit of soy chicken and some rice. It really comes down to the taste of the food. It's made every day, it's fresh, it's put in your hands by wonderful people. It's a sincerity and just a general sense of goodwill that comes out of the shop.
I got some fruit, I got some vegetable and rice noodles. Wait a minute, I think I missed something. Oh, I know. Good morning. That pig looks fantastic. Can I order the crispy pork? That looks yummy. I can't wait to try it. It's perfectly cooked, juicy and tender pork, with a little bit of sauce and rice. It's crispy.
We own Loising Co. since 1994 with a partner. After 6 years, we own the whole store.
Shelley and Daniel are the fourth owners of the store. Loising Co. Meat Market has a history of 130 years. It has witnessed the development of the first Chinatown over Canada, Victoria Chinatown. For many years, their food has been popular in Victoria. Daniel said they use fresh meat for cooking, and their cooking secret is to season the meat properly right before roasting. This is to prevent the taste from becoming hard and to better blend the meat with the seasoning.
这个猪大概有75磅了。
The whole pig like this weighs about 75 pounds. It takes 2.5 hours to roast. When it's well cooked, it would only be 45 pounds. But sometimes one full-size pig is not enough for their customers, especially during the holidays.
用整个猪烤了，保持它的原味，那个汁不要。
According to Daniel, roasting a pig as a whole helps keep the original flavor and juice. If the pig is roasted in pieces, the texture will become dry.
叉烧跟鸭子呢，大概1个小时了。
Barbecue pork and ducks would usually take 1 hour. This couple works so hard to provide wonderful food for their customers.
Yeah, 我们是8点钟回来烤。
They work every day from 8 in the morning, making sure everything is ready by 10:30.
全部可以弄好了。
很多年以前
Shelley said for many years, their customers were mostly Chinese, because in the old days, it was mostly Chinese immigrants lived in Chinatown. However, it changed. Nowadays, both Chinese and non-Chinese people love their food.
I ordered the barbecued lean pork, and he's chopping it up for me, and it looks fabulous.
因为我们是用传统的做法。
It is their traditional cooking style that keeps their customers coming back. The food made by Shelley and Daniel provides me nostalgic sentiments. That's my comfort food. In Chinatown, I'm Lily for Community Producers.